Hi, I am at the lovely, tranquil backyard of Pat Kelly. Pat Kelly and I worked together for years. He was city engineer when I was working with parks and did a whole bunch of projects together.
We did.
Skateboard park, big one.
Very
Anyway,
fun.
he's got this beautiful Lippia lawn, and I am here to grill him and learn more about what it's like to live with Lippia. So, Pat, what motivated you? What made you say, I want to have a Lippia lawn replacement? There was a lawn here, right? Traditional.
Yeah, so we landscaped back in 2009 and put in Marathon, but within a few years, with the dogs, it turned into more of a weed patch and eventually a dirt patch because I'm a little bit too cheap to water.
Uh-huh.
And then our daughters getting married in
Environmentally
2018.
concerned.
That's it.
That's it.
I'm a tree hugger. Any event, so 2018, big event in the family, and we wanted to make the yard look a little bit nicer. So we considered the idea of putting in Marathon again, putting in what was pretty popular at the time, artificial grass, or take advantage of the city's rebate to put in Carapia or some other drought-resistant lawn.
And you ended up
So
going with Lippia / Carapia.
exactly, very happy about that. It costs less and it's prettier.
Cool. And you used somebody else's money for some of it?
Well, that was part of the city rebate,
Right.
which just made it cost effective.
So we were talking a little earlier. You left the majority of the sprinkler system that had been watering the lawn and just adapted it so you could get this off to a good start. The sprinkler
Exactly.
system was there. Great. But since then, I'm kind of jumping around here. You've told me that it gets very, very little water. Could you talk a little about your watering approach once it got established?
Correct. It took a lot of water to establish it, just like a lot of natives, a lot of deep watering, so the roots could go really deep. Then after a few years, I started experimenting with, we chatted about going Darwin on it and to see how little
Survival
water,
of the fittest.
see how little water it needed. So I'd only water it when it started getting a little bit crispy. Now I think I'm down to 2 or 3 waterings a year for the hot spots. And then in some of the shade spots, maybe just a short amount of hand watering.
Wonderful. Whatever's left in your coffee cup, hit a spot there. I mean, that's great. That's been my experience talking to other people and seeing them is once you get it started, oh, and I want to circle back to that, then the key is to allow the surface soil to get a little bit drier and keep the moisture down low in between watering so that you do get that root system, that deep root system anchored.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different things about how deep the roots go, and it's very deep,
Yeah.
from what I understand. And we've had some hot weather, and it's survived it.
That's great. Prior to putting it in, the preparation for the area, you took this down to bare dirt to make sure there wasn't any competition of old stuff coming back.
Well, it was mostly dirt, but what was left was pretty hardy weeds. And
Right.
so there's had to do some weed killer to prepare the lawn, and you go through the process that they recommend to reduce the competition.
Right.
And after it was installed, kept a little bit eye out for weeds in between the stolons that were planted, but it wasn't that much.
Right. You want to jump on all that stuff early so you've got somewhere to go with it.
And I think it's important as to when you plant it too. You want to plant it when it's just about to take off.
So you said you got to start, the event was in August and you put it in the ground how soon before that?
It was installed, I think, in April, and by the event in November, it was 85 or so, 95% filled in.
That's great. So you had an event here. There were people on it. I guess that
yeah.
would be a little bit scary, the foot traffic and all. But it sounds as if, as long as you're not using it as a polo field or soccer practice, it can take some traffic. It'll show, but then it just fills itself back in.
Yeah, we've had different yard parties, and a couple times a year, in one particular year, and it seemed no worse for wear.
That's great. Yeah, we've shot some footage for some other areas where it's a frequent path, and it just looks different. It's smaller leaves, it's more compacted, but it seems to be tolerating that kind of traffic as well. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to live with it, what kind of maintenance it needs, how you would compare that to the time and effort you put into a lawn versus what it takes to keep this behaving itself? Because it does have a reputation.
Well, less mowing, less water. And as far as cleanup goes, because we live underneath some eucalyptus, that at first was a little bit of a challenge as to how to keep it looking good, keeping that meadow look without looking like it's, living underneath a eucalyptus forest. So started with, the mowing was the cleanup, then a little bit of raking, and then I came upon just a simple idea of when, after a windstorm, pick up the chunks from the eucalyptus and then just get a power nozzle.
Oh, one of those little spray nozzles that you use just for washing down.
Exactly, and then that makes the whole environment look very nice. It makes it look like a meadow again.
I'm guessing based on the size of this, you probably go through 2 or 3 gallons of water at the most in terms of what comes out of the hose. So it's still, even though you're using water as a tool, it's pretty thrifty to just spray a little over the top.
Yeah, 3 to 5, depending upon, I'm just thinking in terms of how long it takes me to fill up a 5-gallon bucket. Right. About that a time, maybe a little bit more, but the water's on the green.
Yeah. Oh, so it's going back to good use. Another thing that I know can be problematic with Lippia, especially if it's happy and the rest of the garden is doing well, is you can put in a piece of header board, but it doesn't really care. It laughs and continues growing. So is that a big problem, or how do you approach it when it starts creeping where you don't want it?
Well, like in the spring, I wait until it takes off in spring, and then I go along the border and just cut it along where there's another bed. And right now I'm letting it go over the edge of the patio, just kind of soften up the patio
Yeah,
edge.
it looks
and
really nice.
Do a little bit of a clip. So once a year, probably realistically twice a year, have to look at the edge.
One other thing, though, just to point out, is as Lippia spreads, as long as there's some moisture in the soil, and in most gardens there is, it's also going to root somewhat as it goes. So it's not just a matter of snipping it and taking it off. You'll have to kind of zip them out a little bit, or
easiest thing
hula
to do,
hoe.
Yeah, is to get a shovel to cut the edge, and then just get a hoe and on your and just hoe it up and pick it up on your.
I'd probably be reaching for my flat nose shovel first, and you can get under the mulch even without disturbing it. But that's okay. So a day, a week, a year in the life sounds to me like minimal water once it's established.
Yes.
A little bit of picking through if some new weeds show up, if the birds drop in or something blows in.
Yeah.
No fertilizer.
I just looked up in Sunset Magazine. They says, well, in winter you may want to fertilize it, but
it's
I think in the 4 years I've had it, I fertilized it twice, and I'm wondering if I really even needed to do that.
Probably didn't. I mean, it's not real demanding in terms of nurturing. We're not growing blueberries here.
No.
And then, so it'll take some traffic. It's good for entertaining the bees. It does attract some bees, so I guess it depends on a person's individual feeling about it, especially if they're allergic to bee stings. This may not be the one for you, but you're pretty successful mowing the majority of the flowers off and minimizing that.
Like, for example, if we're having a whole bunch of people coming over, I'll kind of level it off and get maybe 75% of the flowers off. There's still some flowers left. And then just before everybody comes over, I'll hose it to get it wet, and then the bees are gone.
Oh.
The bees really only come when it's hot.
Gotcha. Pat, thank you for opening up your yard to us. It's just beautiful, and I like the fact that we're not going to have to bring in any audio for the bird chirping. Whoever you assigned to be your bird wrangler, they nailed it.
Yeah, well, good to see it.
Good to see it too.
It's great to see it.
Carapia, Lippia, great stuff. Good substitute.